before I ask you that, I'm a marketing student myself, and I have to ask, as a VP of marketing for HubSpot, which is a massive, massive web face on the internet, I mean, where do you genuinely think marketing is going to be in the future? Because it's literally a shift. It's not even a shifting landscape. It's like we're standing on water right now, right? Like trying to swim. Yeah. It's like that different. So I'm curious as to what you think.
Well, I think certainly a lot of what I talked about in my talk is about that, right? Like I think fundamentally that the brands that are going to succeed in the future are people who are content creators and who create content that add value, that use that content to build trust with consumers. So I think like a lot of it is fairly like philosophical in nature, but like brands that stand for something and brands that communicate what they stand for really clearly, I think are going to stand out. I think from like a technical side of the house, like I think like how people market is going to change really dramatically.
How? What do you mean?
So like email is going to continue to lose efficacy over time, right? If you look at most companies, kind of email response rates, like you start to see them like trending down over time, which means you have to send more volume of email in order to get the same response back. It's because people just are going to different platforms. They're on things like Messenger, Facebook Messenger, they're on, in Europe, they're on WhatsApp. There's all sorts of different services where people are. And so I think the marketer's job is to always be where people are. And that's harder than ever because a lot of these platforms where people are, like, they aren't built for marketers to participate particularly easily. So a lot of innovation has to happen there. I think the other big thing is like, right now, like to be a great marketer, like in a technical marketer, you need to learn software.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to have
like what kind of software?
You need to learn all sorts. You need to learn analytics software so that you can build funnels, so you can build reports, so that you can get pixels installed on your website. Like this whole range of technical things you need to learn. You need to learn how to build workflows for email automation. You need to learn how to do a whole bunch of things like that.
So what you're really saying is that the infrastructure is, for the most part, the same. It's just the actual tools and pieces and inputs are shifting dramatically, which in turn is also, in a way, even shifting the infrastructure, right?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is that instead of you learning software, you are going to learn how to tell software what outcome you want and what rules you require.
And I think software learns it itself.
I think we're going to see the software figure it out.
That's interesting. So to kind of jump from that topic to a more in-depth look at kind of who you are as a person, if you don't mind, I want to ask you a question that I haven't been able to ask anybody yet because they're not in the position that you're in. So I'm looking for a fun, creative answer from you, whatever is true and honest, which is just, you're the VP of marketing for HubSpot. So everybody we've interviewed up until this point has been an owner, founder, entrepreneur, CEO, and that's kind of the narrative today of like what to do. I mean, I'm young and I'm looking up and I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess that's what I do, right? Speak to us about that for a second. I mean, working versus owning, and I can just tell by your vibe, you're incredibly fulfilled, you feel successful, and you just are, right? You're a happy dude, and that's amazing. And I want to just touch on that, bring that conversation back into existence for anybody who kind of feels in their heart they don't want to own a business because it's not them. They want to maybe do something like you're doing, find success in a corporate company, and we don't have many people like you these days to talk to that voices are really being loud enough. So I'd love to hear your response.
Yeah, so I think there's two pieces to it. I think there's like what role you serve and whether you are the right person to be a founder or not. Yeah. And then I think there's what size company you work at if you choose not to be a founder.
Okay.
And so I think I just know like that I'm not a founder. Like I just.
How'd you know?
I think I just have always known. I think that like. I think the truth is the people that I know who are really successful founders, and I've worked in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, I've known a lot of these people who are so successful, they have a level of belief in an idea that nobody else believes in that like I haven't had as much in my life. Like I just haven't. Like I love forward-thinking ideas. I love ideas that push against the grain. But it's rare in my life that I have felt like I was so inspired by an idea that no one had thought of yet, that I wanted to go and try and bring it to market. Yeah. And so like that was just me. And I think Gary Vee kind of talked about this today, but it's like we glorify the founder, but like the founders don't succeed without like an amazing number 2 and an amazing number 3. And so I'm not saying I'll never found a company, but like certainly in my 20s and 30s, like that wasn't a big push for me. I think the second piece of it is about size of company. Right, and I've actually worked at companies of a lot of different sizes. I've worked at companies that were closer to 60, companies that were more like 200, and now HubSpot's about 1,500. And I think that like everyone should try different company sizes and see what works. And you get different benefits at different company sizes. The smaller the company, in theory, the easier it is to get things done, but you have to wear a lot more hats, right? I think everybody in smaller companies has to be, a doer. And one of the reasons I joined HubSpot, being a bigger company, is that HubSpot's maintained a lot of that culture of like everyone is a doer, as well as, me being a leader as well. But I think there's pros and cons of different size companies, and I think people need to kind of try them out.
That's a brilliant answer. And to kind of expand on the answer itself, I want to ask you how you've made that work for yourself, because I believe that where a lot of people get stuck is they get stuck in this whole narrative where, like I said, I got to be the owner. And then when they realize, they look themselves in the mirror and they say, oh wait, but I don't have that idea and I don't really have that burn in my belly, but I would make an awesome this, right? They feel like, nope, that's wrong, I gotta be an owner, and they still try to make them do it, like they try to make themselves do it anyway. So I'm curious as to how you became incredibly successful as is, and if you could say any words to somebody out there who's listening to this who might be struggling between and juggling between those two things.
Yeah.
How you've made that work for you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that I'm successful. I think that I feel like I still have a ton of work to do.
Everybody does.
And I feel like I'm learning more now than I've ever learned in my career, and I'm challenged more now than I've ever been challenged in my career. And I think that sometimes people have a slight fallacy about like, oh, like the VP or the CEO, like they just give strategic direction. It's a really hard job, and it's a whole different set of challenge. Managing big teams is really challenging. I think like coordinating across really large groups of stakeholders is really challenging. I appreciate you saying that, but I actually feel like I got a long way to go before I can claim that mantle of success. I think to your broader question, which is about like how do you get there?
How do you just get past that first mental development?
My honest advice is like you just got to roll with it. I think you got to try and create opportunities for yourself, and I think you need to create as many opportunities as you can, and then you have to seize the ones that are best. You know how I got my job in San Francisco?
How'd you get it?
I wrote a paper on the company in graduate school.
And they read it?
I had a friend who knew the CEO, and he was like, you gotta send it to Joe. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm like, I'm not sending my like nerdy business school paper to like a founder in the Valley. And he was like, Joe's cool, just send it. And so I sent it, and Joe wrote back like an hour later and was like, this is awesome. Like, I've been thinking about this. Like, this is a good, smart analysis. Like, if you're ever in San Francisco, like, you should swing by the office and say hello. And so it's just like if you create these opportunities and you just, keep yourself open to different paths, like I think that tends to be what works best. And I feel like when people try and over-engineer like what they want their outcome to be, I think they miss out on great opportunities to let things kind of naturally evolve.